just a reminder that the federal government does a lot of things besides, keep you awake at night because of who their president is. Statement from Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos following a listening session with historically black college and university leaders. Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos released the following statement after a meeting with presidents and chancellors of historically black colleges and universities at the White House. I will skip the key priority for this administration: develop opportunities for communities that are often most undeserved. I will go directly to historically black colleges and university, HBCUs, have done this since their founding. That is, develop opportunities for communities that are often the most underserved. They started from the fact, she's speaking now about historically black colleges and universities.
Yes.
They started from the fact that there were too many students in America who did not have equal access to education. They saw that the system wasn't working. That was an absence of opportunity.
The teachers'
So they took it
union.
upon themselves to provide the solution. HBCUs are real pioneers when it comes to school choice. They are living proof that when more options are provided to students, they are afforded greater access and greater quality. Their success has shown that more options help students flourish. Now, for those of you who are not aware, and I'm speaking specifically to those of you who are probably in middle school or elementary school, and if you are listening to today's show, I'm sorry I started off with a curse word. Historically black colleges, the reason why they're called historically black colleges is because they were started some time ago, like around Reconstruction. And apparently, Wikipedia is blocked at the Secretary of Education. But let me just read a paragraph from it. In 1862, the federal government's Morrill Act, not moral, but M-O-R-R-I-L-L, Act, provided for land-grant colleges in each state. Some educational institutions in the North or West were open to blacks before the Civil War. And because you're in elementary school, well, you should know, it's 1865. But 17 states, mostly in the South, had segregated systems and generally excluded black students from their land-grant colleges. In response, Congress passed the Second Morrill Act of 1890, also known as the Agricultural College Act of 1890, requiring states to establish a separate land grant for a college for blacks if blacks were being excluded from the existing land grant college. Many of the HBCUs were founded by states to satisfy the Second Morrill Act. In other words, the federal government provided money and required under the Agricultural Act of 1890 to open black universities if you were not allowing black students into your universities through the first grant for colleges. It's not a question of choice because they didn't have a choice. In fact, these colleges existed because there was no choice. So they're not the real pioneers when it comes to school choice.
Jim Crow led to a lot of innovation. But the
It
school
wasn't-
teachers' unions, on the other hand,
It wasn't that these black colleges realized that the system wasn't working and they decided to open their own. It was the federal government realized that states, particularly southern ones, were basically refusing to provide for the education of a large segment of their population. And so they gave federal money for it. So, I mean, aside from the incredible ignorance associated with this, and then aside from the attempt to pigeonhole her voucher system, and graft it onto a historical example of the federal government, why, when you talk about states' rights, you're talking about the right to discriminate, and the federal government's role in mitigating or attempting to eliminate states' racial discrimination. Aside from that, she also misses one of the primary justifications for having a federal Department of Education, to ensure that public schools are operating well in every state, because the states drop the ball, sometimes on purpose, sometimes just because they don't have the money.
That was like one of the calls we used to get in a press release.
That's
It
unbelievable.
was basically like they just saw a market opening for getting their own schools.
Exactly.
And they innovated their way out of apartheid. What's your problem with that?
It was
Yeah,
completely disruptive.
If we kept doing that, then those kids probably already have jetpacks and fucking tablets in every house, and black people be the richest people in the history of the earth. But, government came along, instituted desegregation, got rid of Jim Crow, and now you got all sorts of poverty and problems, man.
There it is.
Hopefully Betsy DeVos will fix it. Imagine if you reinstated Jim Crow, the amount of
She
wealth.
can't hire somebody, she can't even find, the problem
No.
is the only historian
Every answer is no.
The only historians she knows about her are just like, oh, my specialty was actually late antiquity. I just know the parts about from when
specialty late antiquity.
Igon was born of a to the point where John dipped that dude in the water, and those are my.
I have a degree from Glenn Beck University, and I am Betsy DeVos's special advisor on
Everyone on our
empowerment
staff just came
opportunities.
from the Creationist Museum for their.
Did you see the clip
PhD.
that we played yesterday of her, where she was at CPAC? And in most things we've seen of her, she's being, completely hapless, ill-informed, and kind of like vaguely nice in an oddly disturbing way. And she goes to CPAC and she goes, "I'm a mom. I'm a, basically I'm a mom, life partner," which was an interesting choice of words. And the person who told Bernie Sanders to his face that there's no such thing as a free lunch. And
Billionaire since birth, right?
right, literally like one of the biggest trust fund babies in the history of humankind, saying like
Babies,
adults.
not kids, right? In other words, she didn't just from day one.
From day
right.
one,
Billionaire since birth.
she has a free life.
Wait, I don't know. You didn't mention this either, Michael, yesterday. But the reason why I now want to also punch her, along with Nazis, is that there is such a thing as free lunch. Millions of kids depend on it not to starve to death in this country, and she's in charge of the Department of Education that provides those free lunches.
They would feel a lot better.
It is literally the only meal that millions of kids in the country eat every day.
I think they would feel a lot better if they had their own lunch packed for them by their parents. So
The school lunch programs, however, I think are through the USDA.
yeah.
But
well, let's fucking hope so, because
Let's hope so. So that Mike, what is that guy, Sonny Perdue, can be like, "Oh, I think we should still feed the kids something. There's some off-brand industrial race from Cargill that we could reformulate.
We got some new
for 'em."
pâtés made out of corn syrup.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
well, but the
I
point
mean,
being,
and also in the poorest areas of the country, and I read a few articles on this. Just some of my friends are teachers, just like everyone else, and they've taught in places where the school district was extremely reluctant to cancel school because the kids wouldn't be able to eat. They had breakfast programs and lunch programs, and that was all those kids were going to be able to get.
hey, it's Sam Seder. Why don't you subscribe to this channel? You can do so right over here. Subscribe.